Hello again. In the last couple of talks I did with Pam, we talked about garden birds and birds you might see in your garden during lockdown. I thought I would add now at the end of summer just a few more of interest. And last time I mentioned how the wood pigeon was featured in the RSPB's Garden Birdwatch, which is well worth logging into and participating to. The wood pigeon was said then to have increased from number 12 on the list of most popular garden birds to number 2. But the most recent addition on the site is January 2020 and places it actually at number 4. This is below the house sparrow, starling and blue tit, with blackbird at number 5, robin at number 9 and magpie number 10. It's enlightening to browse the site because apparently this last year, nearly 500,000 people contributed counts of almost 8 million birds, the most since the Garden Birdwatch began 25 years ago. It'll be seen that, of course, the list varies quite a bit regionally, as well as from year to year. Another pigeon or dove that seems to be turning up with greater frequency is the collared dove. It has a distinctive short cuckoo call, cuckoo coo, cuckoo coo, different from the 5 notes of its larger cousin. The open country wood pigeon is becoming commoner in suburbia, but the collared dove did not even exist in the UK before the 1950s. No one knows why it should suddenly erupt out of its Asian home and rapidly spread across Europe. The rock dove is largely confined to coastal cliffs now and is the common pigeon where I live here in the Hebrides. But it's from this species that the common or garden feral pigeon has descended. And it now comes in all shapes and sizes, even white. Not everyone welcomes such large and therefore greedy visitors as the wood pigeon, attractive though it is, at their garden feeding station. Other unwelcome invaders in some gardens might be gulls. Birdwatchers do not like the term seagulls. There are actually several distinct species, and it's worth pointing out that the differences between some of them most of you will be likely to see during lockdown. Immature gulls are confusing and for the specialist, so I'm going to deal with adults only. I'll start with an easy one, the black-headed gull. It's found in towns and cities and may turn up in gardens. In fact, it does not have a black head, as you can see, it's brown. And even this is lost in wintertime, leaving only a blackish spot behind its eye. Another misnomer is the common gull, which is not all that common in truth. It's often referred to by its slightly better American name, the mew gull, reflecting its call. Gulls often arrive here from Scandinavia to spend the winter. And when I was misnetting birds for ringing in my garden in Inverness a long time ago, I used to catch the occasional common gull, and one of them, identified by the number on its ring, was later reported dead in northern Norway. But our common gulls tend to nest on the ground. In northern Norway, I've seen them nesting in trees. The common gull that we tend to see is in fact the herring gull, larger and more intimidating perhaps than the common gull. It has a conspicuous red spot at the tip of its beak, which the chicks peck at to induce the parent to regurgitate food. They have pink legs and a grey back. In some places, they've taken to nesting on rooftops. There's a rather attractive flat roof from a hotel in Gothenburg a few years ago, planted with attractive clovers and all sorts, thrift and such like. And of course, the roof nesting gulls really appreciate that. But where the gulls perhaps cause the greatest nuisance is, of course, along seaside promenades. And they also make an awful lot of noise at night if they're nesting on a rooftop near your bedroom. But at the seaside, they find an endless supply of fast food scraps, but learn to be bolder and actually swoop down to snatch even ice creams from unsuspecting holidaymakers. Some folk just enjoy feeding them, but the lessons that we learn are that we shouldn't really be feeding birds in public places and must not throw away food. A closely related species to the herring gull, but less often venturing into built-up areas, is the lesser blackback gull. Summer visitor only, which looks much the same size and appearance as the herring gull, except for its sooty black back, not grey, and its yellow, not pink legs. The largest gull in the world is called the greater blackback gull, with a darker back, still pink legs, like the herring gull, but still the red pecking spot. You're less likely to encounter this away from the coast. And while it might look pretty intimidating, the chicks in fact, look harmless enough. This illustrates, gull chicks illustrate an interesting feature. They're precocious from the outset. As soon as they hatch, covered in camouflaged down, with their eyes open and legs developed, they tend to wander out of the nest and seek cover round and about. Whereas kittiwakes, a closely related gull, nesting on precipitous sea cliffs, their chicks very quickly appreciate from birth not to wander. They stick very firmly, clasping their cup-shaped nest of mud and seaweed. Kittiwakes nest in buildings as well, particularly in Norway. This is a harbour, a house near a harbour in Western Norway. And they're very handy in gull recognition because they actually tell you what they are. They have a very obvious kittiwake, kittiwake, kittiwake call. So you don't need to look up a book to see what it is. Must be rather nice to have kittiwakes nesting on your window ledge. And this is an antique shop in Ålesund. At the start of the breeding season, most birds develop what's known as a brood patch just prior to laying, where the feathers are lost so that the eggs can lie snugly against the well-vasculated skin and keep them warm. This is a storm petrel. These are precocious mallard ducklings, like a lot of wildfowl. they are very active and well covered in down from the outset. This is a lapwing nesting on the ground with its family. The chicks, again, precocious. And in fact, when they're very small, they look as though they're all head and legs, really. Very mobile and able to leave the nest to find cover and safety from predators. Ground nests and eggs can fall prey to both aerial and ground predators, so it's wise to hide. The other strategy is from precocial is altricial, adopted by most of the birds we might encounter breeding in our gardens, for instance. The nests are pretty well concealed, but they can still be discovered by cats and other predators. And as we too often witness, perhaps magpies. Altricial chicks, and indeed those of magpies themselves, are born naked with their eyes closed. This is a starling on its nest, and its altricial chicks, of course, like all the others, are born without any down, and the adults have to brood them until they're able to keep warm themselves with a covering of down. As soon as an adult visits, they see a shadow or feel movement in the nest, they gape, expecting to be fed. And the bright yellow is a signal to the adults to be able to find if the nest is dark. The adults can find them easily. This nest was in an electricity junction box near my house, and I'd taken the roof off so as I could take photographs briefly. But it gave me a chance, without disturbing them too much, to see the development of the chicks as they grew. Amongst altricial species, the fledging period can range from 17 to 22 days in the goldcrest to 10 weeks in much larger birds like this white-tailed sea eagle. From the egg to the big fully grown bird in the background in 10 weeks. In extreme subantarctic conditions, the king penguin chicks take about 10 months. When I was a student at the field station in rural Aberdeenshire, a friend and I made a part-time study of magpies, allowing a nice opportunity for photographs. It's not a particularly common bird in northern Scotland. Their large, conspicuous dome nests are relatively easy to find in the comparatively treeless agricultural landscape. We found that our study birds laid from 5 to 8 eggs, average about 6, in a neatly lined nest cup. And they hatch after 18 or 19 days or so. And within 4 weeks, they're ready to leave the nest. But I want to finish with a few comments about a familiar bird, albeit rarely seen in gardens, but one that most of us find particularly fascinating, the cuckoo. Wordsworth referred to it as a wandering voice. I start hearing it called daily from my own garden here in the Hebrides from the end of April, slightly later than further south. It's remained pretty common in Scotland, but the species has declined by as much as 60% in England, perhaps due to a scarcity of its favourite food, the hairy caterpillars, perhaps as a result of agricultural chemicals, pesticides, etc. Hairy caterpillars may not be a very suitable diet for baby cuckoos, but whatever the reason, in common with 100 or so species out of some 10,000 kinds in the world, European cuckoos have adopted a relatively rare breeding strategy known as brood parasitism. This involves leaving an egg in the nest of another species so that it can be reared by the unwitting host without further input from the parents. This has evolved several fascinating adaptations to dupe the host species into accepting the extra egg. The cuckoo usually matches its egg in size and color to its preferred host, whether it be a dunnock, where they're pale blue, reed warbler, in this case, meadow pipit, speckled brown. The seemingly helpless cuckoo hatches a little quicker than the host eggs, and it can begin to eject the host's eggs, even chicks, one by one, thus receiving all the food from this unsuspecting parent, even when it's several times larger and fatter than its parents, foster parents. They have a slight depression in their back and just seem to react, although it's blind, they seem to react to the presence of other eggs in the nest and feel compelled to eject them. When it's ready to migrate south for the winter, all the adults are long gone, so they don't have the benefit of being shown where to go. But they find their own way completely innately. There have been several fascinating books written about the cuckoo, so well worth looking out for. And satellite tagging is currently revealing the routes they may follow every year to cross the inhospitable Mediterranean, usually by the shorter land connections and even the deserts of Sahara, as you can see from the yellow bird. The satellite tags are tiny and don't hamper the bird much, but give us almost a daily account of where it happens to be. And they find eventually either crossing the Sahara or going around the west coast of Africa. They find their comfortable winter quarters in Central Africa and are ready in the spring to migrate back to this country. So that's a rather fascinating insight into cuckoos, and maybe a bit more to add to your garden bird experiences. Okay.